Hello, my name is Greta Svitsky, and welcome to the fifth video in this multi-part tutorial on system dynamics modeling and Stella software from IC Systems. If you're just joining us, I recommend going back and watching the first 4 videos in this playlist to give you some background on some basic terminology, on feedbacks, on the basic components of system dynamics models, and causal loop diagrams. Today, in this video, we will be talking about what makes system dynamics modeling different and important, and what are some of the characteristics we look for in our system dynamics models. So first of all, what makes system dynamics modeling different from other kinds of modeling? It takes a very holistic approach, looking at whole system analyses, contrasting from other kinds of modeling that are often more reductionistic and only focus on one or some of the components of a larger system. In addition, system dynamics models are really great at picking up on feedback loops where the outcome of a system is affected by the system's behavior. Sensitivity to initial conditions, so getting into things like chaos, like the butterfly effect, and nonlinearity when the system behavior is more than the addition of its parts. And in addition, system dynamics models can include time delays, which are often important in these systems. How do you know if system dynamics modeling is right for you? Here are some examples of questions that might benefit from a system dynamics approach. First of all, assessing complex system behavior and outcomes. For example, if we were to model supply and demand analysis, that would need to include feedbacks between price and consumer behavior and manufacturing delays, making it a great candidate for a system dynamics approach. Also, identifying underlying mechanisms for system behavior. For example, if we were looking at population dynamics over time and we saw that a population was decreasing, we can look at some of the components of a system and see which one may be responsible for that decline. For example, could it be changes in birth rates or predation rates, natural death rates, or a combination of multiple effects? And finally, exploring the consequences of system interventions. If we were to change system components or relationships, how would the system change as a whole? For example, if we were to model greenhouse gas emissions in the United States, could we change a component of that model to introduce a carbon tax, and would overall system behavior change? Overall, system dynamics modeling is great for assessing system structure and behavior over time. So how do we do that? We do that by asking questions like, do stocks and flows change over time? And if so, how? For example, do the stocks of the number of predators and the number of prey change over time? And if so, can we attribute that change to some other mechanism within the system? Some other questions are, does the system exhibit stability, resilience, and does it reach equilibrium? Let's get into what those 3 components of system behavior mean. Equilibrium is a state in a system where the rates of change of variables equal 0. If we take our bathtub example, a state of equilibrium might be that there is no flows in or out of the bathtub, so no draining and no water coming out of the faucet, in which case our stock would be at 0. There would be 0 water in the bathtub and it would be unchanging, so the rate of change would be 0. This is static equilibrium, meaning that there are no flows in and out of the stock. Our bathtub could also be experiencing dynamic equilibrium, where the flow out of the faucet into the bathtub is the same as the amount of water being drained out of the bathtub. In that case, the amount of water in the bathtub would stay the same even though there are flows in and out of that stock. A system will remain at equilibrium unless acted upon by an outside force, and how the system responds to that outside force tells you if that sort of equilibrium is neutral, stable, or unstable. So we can think back to our mountainous landscape vector field and remember that there are some points in our mountainous landscape where if we move a little bit, we'll roll down the hill. That would be an unstable equilibrium. So if we're at equilibrium and we're nudged a little bit, we will then go out of equilibrium. If we're in a valley in our mountainous landscape and we're nudged a little bit, we'll fall right back into that equilibrium, and that is stable. There's also neutral or metastable equilibrium, where if we're nudged a little bit out of our place of equilibrium, we can imagine a plateau where the ball would just continue to roll. So let's talk a little bit about stability. If a system is in equilibrium and it's knocked out of equilibrium, the way that the system responds can tell you if it was a stable point or an unstable point. If the system was at a stable point, it's knocked out of that stable point and it returns to equilibrium, that is stable. If it's knocked out of equilibrium and it continues to move out of equilibrium, that is unstable. A lot of the time, if we're working with a stable system, the system will continue to return to a single point of equilibrium or a point of attraction. And this can happen in a number of different ways. Static stability would be no movement away from the point of equilibrium. Dynamic stability might be moving above and below that point of attraction, but never getting too far away from it. And asymptotic stability is a system that is always trending toward that point of attraction, but may never reach it. Finally, a huge buzzword in system dynamics is resilience. And resilience is a measure of a system's ability to return back to a stable state after a disturbance. So it's similar to stability in that we are returning to a stable state after a disturbance, and it is often achieved through multiple feedbacks. Often these are going to be balancing feedbacks that work through multiple mechanisms to restore a system to its desired state. And we can see here in this little graphic on the slide what that might look like. So a system will start at equilibrium, experience a disturbance, and then go through a recovery phase to the new steady state, which should be the same as the old steady state. So these have been a few components of system behavior that are important for understanding how a system responds to disturbances and whether or not a system is in equilibrium. So in summary, system dynamics modeling takes a more holistic approach to looking at whole system analyses, identifying causal relationships, and has a focus on feedback loops, chaos, and nonlinearity. System dynamics models are a series of differential equations that represent the study system. A model is made up of stocks, flows, and converters. Causal loop diagrams are a great place to start by understanding all of the different causal relationships in a system. And finally, systems may or may not exhibit equilibrium, stability, and resilience. Thanks so much for watching, and join me for my next video where we will begin to create our own model.